Thank you for joining us on another episode of Choices Were Made. We are so grateful for all the love and support you showed us on our first two episodes. If you haven't listened to those yet, we highly recommend checking those out first as they set the stage for what we're talking about today. So far, we've shared a lot about difficult moments and unhealthy patterns we've had to unlearn, but today we want to shift the focus. We're talking about the specific choices, habits, and resources that helped us begin our healing journey. It hasn't been perfect and not everything has worked, but we tried anyway. And the effort alone changed everything. So let's get into it.
Yes. Well, thanks for being here today. After listening to your episode, what advice do you think you would have given your younger self if you were looking back at yourself now?
This is something that I've thought a lot about in my classes because we talk so much about self care. And for me, right now, my version of self care is giving myself a lot of compassion and not being so hard on myself when I don't do things exactly the way I'm supposed to. I used to focus so much on what I didn't do. Right now, having a child and being in school and doing this podcast and working, I have so many things on my plate that at the end of the day, if I do one thing wrong, I beat myself up for it. Instead of saying, I did so many things right, I focus on the negative. So giving myself a lot of compassion.
Yeah, I feel like that is kind of a trend with all of us, like our perfectionism mindset where we have to do everything perfectly. Or for me, at least, it's like the all or nothing. Like either I'm gonna work out 7 days a week and diet every single day, and then if I veer off from my path or from my goals one day, then I just give up.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've learned a lot, especially right now that I've taken on a lot of goals. I also try to give myself like get out of that perfectionism mindset and try to also give myself a lot of compassion and think like, okay, maybe today I didn't do everything I was supposed to do, but I can always try again tomorrow and I don't have to give up. And I think that is, kind of the point, not pushing myself so hard and so far and like setting myself up for failure by setting my expectations so high and then feeling so bad about myself when I can't meet them. And I actually read this really amazing book that really helped me in my mindset. It's called Atomic Habits. And the book talks about how to build habits in your day to day life. And the whole theme of the book is like, you're not going to build a habit by trying to be perfect every single day of your life until you achieve perfectionism. You're going to build habits by doing things every single day that change the way that you live your lives. One of my really big goals in my life and that I've had for a really long time is to study for this huge exam that I have to do for my profession. And for me, it seemed impossible because it's 4 exams and each of them take between 80 and 120 hours of study time. And the pass rate is, I think, like 40%. It's insane.
Worse than the bar.
Yeah, it is so difficult. And then it it's so detailed, like, the exam, it seems impossible, and for a lot of my life, it did seem impossible. So after reading that book, it really set the stage for me to understand that, I don't have to do I don't have to change my life in a ridiculous way to fit my goals into my life. I can make small changes in my everyday life. And so what that book, it really encouraged me to do was to kind of look at my life and look at the goals that I want to set and start doing small things every single day. And so that's what I did. And I started and I'd say to myself, because before I would say, I'm going to study 4 hours a day. And if I don't, then I'm just not going to even bother. And so what I started to do to get out of that mindset was that every single day I would study 1 hour, 30 minutes to 1 hour. And honestly, when I started doing it, I was like, I'm never going to finish this. Like
Yeah.
if I kind of look at what it takes to take this exam and look at my plan to get there, it seemed impossible. I was like, how is studying 1 hour a day going to get me anywhere? But that's the thing about habits. That's the thing about doing things in small portions that eventually they stack up to something big. And so I did. I studied for about 6 months, 6 or 7 months. And eventually, after 6 or 7 months, I had accumulated 120 hours of study time. And not just study time, but real study time where I was really looking into the material because I didn't push myself to do any more. And when I passed the exam, I couldn't believe it because I never thought that doing something like such a small change, like studying 1 hour a day, would make a difference. And the truth is that it did because I didn't beat myself up. And if I didn't study, I would say, okay, tomorrow I'll study. And that's another thing that the book said, that it's never your first slip up that's the big deal. The first slip up, we're all human and we all make mistakes. But it's the second slip up that leads you to break your habits. So, like, let's say I didn't study today. Okay, that's fine. Give myself a little bit of grace. I'm a human. I'm tired. Things happen. But tomorrow I'll just get back on it and not, oh, tomorrow I'm going to study 3 hours because I'm
Yeah.
punishing myself. No, tomorrow I'm studying 1 hour. I gave myself a day of grace. And the next day I'll just study my 1 hour because that's also something that I used to do. I punish myself a lot.
Obviously, I like to always think where this stems from, and that reminds me so much of when we were kids that we weren't allowed to mess up, and we weren't shown that much grace, and now as an adult, how are we supposed to do it with ourselves if we were never shown how to do that as children?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think when I think of all these things about like the way that we grew up and obviously I at least or and I know you do too want to like make it really clear that we don't blame our parents at all. We don't blame our family. It was the circumstances of the time. And now that I'm a parent, I understand so much more how hard it is to be a parent and you just don't know if you're doing the right thing and you don't know what you don't know. And if I look at my mom and she obviously wanted to do better than her mom and in looking at the way
Like,
she had as a
mhm,
childhood, I think she did a really good job of that. But it's also I look at it like, okay, I have to be empathetic. I have to think like my family isn't doing this maliciously. It's just the way that we know how to live our life. And I think of it as a chain of trauma
yeah,
because it's so common where like my mom would feel pressure from her mom to raise us a certain way. And so a lot of the things that she did weren't necessarily because she wanted to, but because she felt pressure, probably because she felt like she couldn't make her mom happy. We felt we
yeah.
couldn't make our parents happy. Like maybe our kids, hopefully not, but they'll feel like they can't make us happy. This is where the generational trauma comes from.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a lot of when I was writing my notes for this episode, because the question that you wrote for this episode was, "What are the things that helped you start your healing process?" And it reminded me of the unhealthy things that I did to start my healing process, and in the early days, that was looking for love in unstable relationships, and that really affected me as a teenager, looking for love in all of these different places that I was never gonna find it because I just wanted to feel some sort of happiness, and obviously, as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, my first thought wasn't, "Okay, I'm gonna read a book and learn how to change
Yeah.
my habits, learn how to change my life, and then I'll be happy." No, my first idea was, okay, I'm gonna look for happiness somewhere else. And if that was guys, if that was like partying, if that was doing other things, that was what I thought was gonna bring me happiness. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized, that isn't real happiness. That's just numbing you from feeling what you have to feel. And it kind of goes also towards the theme that we talked about in our other episode of our PV Lady days and how that was like
Oh, yes.
a euphoria of so many years of, we would come back and we would immediately start planning our next trip.
Yeah.
And why? Because we didn't feel anything. We didn't feel sadness. We didn't feel any sort of negative emotions because we were just high on euphoria and being happy and everything felt so far away. So that's what kept me going for so long. And then that ended. So it was kind of like, okay, what am I going to use to distract myself now?
Yeah.
And then it kind of set me in a position of, okay, am I going to keep going the way I'm going and just keep replacing one negative habit with another? Or am I going to stop and really think about what do I need to really be happy long term?
I remember those PB Lady times as, like, the best days of my life, and even though those were one of the best moments of my life because I lived like I never lived before, like, danced and just was so free, it's like, I also have this sense of, like, sadness because I remember looking back at that time as such a sad, like, I wanted to escape my life, and those were the only moments that I could escape my life and be whoever I wanted to be. I don't remember exactly how PB Ladies got started. There were, like, different groups of us
Yeah.
that would go, but one time it was me, you, and our other sister, the one that's younger than me. And we went, and I think you must have been, what, 16 years old
Yeah.
or something. And at that time, like, I had already moved out, obviously you would sleep over and stuff like that, but I don't think you knew much about my life.
No.
And so I remember going out and the first night, and we stayed out until like 6 a.m. dancing and just being just so free. And then the next day you were like, I didn't think that you, like, who are you? You had, like, I remember you telling me, I just thought you were some accountant who just, like, super serious. And, like, I didn't know that you had this side of you
Yeah.
because it wasn't me. It was me just being out, dancing and being free and just being whoever I wanted to be. And although I remember those times with, obviously, that got me through some really hard times, I also look back and I'm like, poor girl. Like, she was just trying to find happiness anywhere.
Yeah.
And I would say it was the best of times because it did give us all, I think, something that we really needed at the time. But I think you're right. I think it was just one distraction after another. And kind of getting married and having kids and realizing that if I don't heal myself, nothing in this world will ever make me happy. No matter how, good life is or no matter how bad life is, if I don't do the work, I'm never going to be able to find joy in anything.
And I think it's important to note that with the PV Ladies times, we didn't have this dynamic. We didn't know a lot about each other's lives, and we were kind of just like family, but we weren't friends. So going to do PV Ladies, that was really the start of
Yeah.
our relationship because we're 8 years apart. So by the time you moved out, I was really young. And I remember feeling kind of like an outsider because I'm the youngest one, so by the time I was old enough, you all had your own lives, and I was kind of just growing up alone, and those PB Lady days really showed me that even though we're family, we can also be friends.
Yeah, and we did grow really close. When that time of our life ended, it was so sad because we just had some of the best moments. And then now we're, like you said in your episode, like we're just kind of, we were married, we have kids, we have jobs, you're in school, and we have all these millions of things that are going on. And we never really thought that we would ever have anything that could help us, distract ourselves from some of the harder parts in our life. And so I think that having this podcast is kind of like the adult version of us. Something in our life where we can kind of escape for a little bit and be ourselves and be our true selves because, I don't know where I think I must have listened to some podcast or read a book that was saying how like, it's really hard for women to come home and have grace with their family because they go out into the world with all this armor up. You wake up in the morning and you just put on your armor like if you're like in a military going out into the world trying to protect yourself from all these crazy things that are going on in the world, and then you come home and it's exhausting to take that armor off, so you just keep it on. And so you have all these walls up with your partners and your family and your kids, and I think it's really hard to like let our guard down and be like, no, like when I come home I'm safe. My partner is here for me. My kids are here for me. My family is here for me. And I think that's really hard, which obviously for me, at least, it leads into a lot of issues because my husband will be like, how was your day? And I'll be like, oh, it was good. And that's it. And there's no elaboration. And then he'll go into his day in depth about what he ate and where he went and who he saw and who he talked to and what he saw on the freeway. And then I'm just kind of like annoyed because I'm like, um, I feel like, I'm someone for him to talk to, but I can't talk to him, but not because he doesn't want me to talk to him, but because
Yeah.
I can't open up to him.
Mhm.
And it's really difficult to change that habit about myself because we grew up in a home, obviously, where everyone has their own problems. So you
Yeah.
didn't talk about those things.
Yeah, I've been listening to this podcast, and it's of Latinas, and they're therapists, and they basically talk about their life, they talk about their families, and listening to this podcast, I really just think we all just live the same
Yeah.
life. Like, we all grew up the same way, and I was listening on the way here to an episode they posted on holidays with the family, and how it used to be really hard to continue setting your boundaries during the holidays because now, everyone wants to do so many different events and everyone wants to get together. At the end of the day, we're all adults and we also have to work. And
Yeah.
we also have so many other responsibilities that not just because it's the holidays, it means that you're just available every
Yeah.
day. And setting those boundaries is really hard. And they talk about how it's something that you have to work on every single day, and it's something that you have to do for the rest of your life, just setting up boundaries and setting up your habits and not allowing people to disrupt your routines, because I know for me that's really difficult. If someone or some event disrupts my routine, I get really annoyed because I spent so long looking for this routine that made me happy, and now that I have it, any little thing that disrupts it really annoys me. For example, I Saturdays is my day to, like, meal prep and go to go to the gym and go to the store and clean my house because on Sundays I like to do nothing, so I do it all
Mhm.
on Saturdays. And yesterday was my daughter's birthday party, and I had school, so the whole day I was just out doing things, getting things ready, and I couldn't do anything that I had to do on my routine, so I was really annoyed. And obviously, it's not her fault, and it's not anyone's fault. It's just something that at this point in my life, it gives me so much sanity that any little thing that disrupts it is just very unsettling.
And this is a great example of the realities of being an adult. Because for me, Sundays are days where I want to be home. I don't want to do anything. And so for me, Sunday dinners are the worst because even though I want to be there with my family, my mom has Sunday dinners every single Sunday. And I want to be there because I want to see my family and I want to see my parents and I want to be a part of it. It's like, if I don't get one day in my week to rest and be home and be with my kids and just do nothing, go nowhere, eat whatever
Mhm.
I want, like, do whatever I want, then it really sets me up for failure for the whole week.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
it's so hard because sometimes my mom will invite me or my mom will just be like, "Oh, hey, we're gonna be getting together," because that's the day that works for most people, but it doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
And so then I have to make a decision. Okay, do I want to miss out or do I want to disrupt my boundary and then pay for it later? Because at the end of the day, I'm the one who ends up paying for it because I don't have my day to rest. So then basically, like, my whole week, I didn't, I don't have my meal prep ready. I didn't go grocery shopping. I didn't rest. And so I always have to kind of make that decision. The past few weeks, I've been saying no more, but instead of making me feel better, it makes me feel worse because
Mhm.
then I'm stuck at home trying to rest, but I'm full with anxiety because I'm like, oh, I hope they're not mad at me. I hope my family's not mad at me. We don't get together that often during the week. And so they probably don't see the kids. So if I don't go over, that means that, they don't get to see the kids for a couple of weeks. And so it's something that I've been really struggling with because instead of resting, I just end up having the whole day anxiety. I'm thinking that everyone's mad at me. And then I don't get to go to Sunday dinners or get to rest.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, what do you think would happen if you asked her to change Sunday dinner, for example, to a Saturday?
I mean, obviously, growing up a people pleaser, I would probably blow up. I mean, I don't want to inconvenience anyone. And I just, I've never thought about actually ever doing that. And I would want to do that. But I mean, I think the way that I look at it now is it is what it is. And
Mhm.
if we end up getting together on a Friday and a Saturday and I get to see them, then that's great. And if I don't, then hey, if I want to see them during the week, then they're only a drive away. I don't try to push myself because I think my problem is also trying to be everything for everyone.
Mhm.
And that's really hard for me because I know that the truth is that they probably don't care really if they see me. They want to see the
Yeah.
kids, right? Like, I'm very aware of that. And so I do it a lot for my kids too, but I think that there has to be a space in my life where I have to also take care of
Yeah.
myself. And to be honest, I think seeing my family every single week is too much. I
Yeah,
really do, because I feel like there is so many things I need to do, and what ends up happening, and I think one of the hardest things about being a first gen adult is realizing that I have my own family now. And it's so hard to accept that, because for the longest time, when I was married, living in my own house, I was still living under my parents' rules. I was living in my own house, but not really having a life, because I still lived my life according to their rules, or according to how they were going to see me, and not wanting to disappoint them. And so it wasn't until much, much later in my life, when I had my kids, later after I had my kids, that I had to set my foot down and say, this is my house, and I'm going to live my life however I see fit. And so it's really hard to separate myself, especially during the holidays, because how do you create holiday traditions with your family if you're
yeah,
always with someone else's family? So
yeah,
that boundary is really hard.
yeah, that's definitely something that I've talked with my husband about because I've told him, I want us to have our own family traditions. I want us to have our own things that we do in the holidays. Obviously, we never really grew up with, for example, like Santa and things like that, that kids normally grow up with here. And I told him I want to do that. I want to give my kids a normal childhood where they believe in Santa and they put up a tree and we do things as a family. And for example, my daughter's birthday, her birthday party was yesterday, but her birthday's on Tuesday. And I told him on Tuesday, it's just you, me, and her, and we're
Hmm.
going to the aquarium, and it's just
Yeah.
going to be the three of us because it's her birthday, and I want us to spend time as a family. And right now, family means us three. It doesn't mean
Yes.
everybody. And that's really hard to get to a place where I don't feel guilty that I'm not inviting everybody, because something that really bothers me about the culture is that everything has to become something of 300 people, or everything has to be
Yes.
something
Those
where
grandiose
yeah,
parties that no one enjoys, because you can't enjoy a party that's that big, because instead of paying attention to your child because it's their birthday, you're attending to 100 plus
yeah.
people.
Yeah, and it's something that I've really put my foot down of going out to dinner with
Mm.
everybody, because that just gives me so much stress. Because keep in mind, we're 6 people, just us, and then 3 of us are married, 2 of us have children. So now that's 20 plus people going out to dinner, like, poor waiter that
Yeah.
has to attend to
And
us.
then our children are
Yeah,
all under 4 years
yeah,
old.
and that's just horrible.
Yesterday was your daughter's birthday party, and so I saw a lot of new parents there, and that gives me so much
So much
anxiety. Like
anxiety.
like seeing a new parent triggers me like nothing in this world. And seeing them like with their little babies and knowing everything that they're going through. We were at the party and our cousin was with his baby, and his baby was crying and he was obviously uncomfortable. And I just remember that feeling of being a new parent and feeling like I have to show up to this party. Even though my child is miserable, I'm miserable. We're trying so hard to like, still be normal people, but we're not anymore. We're parents. And there are times where my kids, for example, like on Mother's Day, I wanted I wanted to go dressed up matching with my kids. And I really had this vision of, I'm going to go matching. My sister had brought us some little outfits from Vietnam and they were all watermelon themed. And I really wanted to go matching with them. Right. And so Mother's Day comes and I get dressed. My younger son, I dress him, and then I go to dress my older son. He starts screaming bloody murder. He's undressing himself in the hallway. He's crying. And I'm like, no, you're going to wear that outfit because I have a vision and you're not going to ruin it. And I'm mad. And then my husband's mad at me because he's like, well, if he doesn't want to wear it, just don't let him. And I was like, don't get involved. And I take him like that, and then we compromise. I put a sweater on him in May. It's like 100 degrees. And the whole time he's crying. And it's just like moments where it just really humbles me to just be like, you know what? I need to stop trying to do everything.
Yeah,
My life is different now. And
yeah,
there are times where my kids don't want to go anywhere. There are times when they're not in the mood. There's times where I push them because I said I was going to be somewhere. And so I think that also as new parents, we just have to give ourselves so much grace to just be like, you know what? No,
yeah.
because my child isn't having it, or they're not in the mood, or they're just not feeling well. And I'm not going to push them to do something that we're all going to be miserable for.
And that's something that's so hard to explain to people that don't have kids or older people that have already had their kids and raised their kids, and they don't think about that anymore. And yesterday at the party, there were so many people that had babies, and the babies were crying, the parents were so anxious,
Running
and
behind
yeah,
them.
and I was actually talking about this with my friend. I said, "I hear babies cry, and I feel like I get war flashbacks." Literally terrifies me to my core.
There'll be times where my husband and I are laying in bed and we hear crying, even though no one's crying. And we just look at each other. We're like, is that the baby? And it gives us shivers.
Yeah.
A really big coping mechanism for
Yeah.
moms and for parents to
Denial.
lie. Just denial, just say denial. And I think that it's one of those things that you just go through the motions that you literally forget about
Yep.
until you're put back in that place when you hear babies cry or when you see new parents. Because every time I see a new mom, it brings me right back to that place when my son was born and I had no idea what I was doing. And I would just look at this baby and I'm like, you deserve a better mom
Yeah.
than what I can give you. And it's so hard, I think, to realize that you have all of these visions and you have all of these ideas of how you want to be as a parent. And then these little humans are born and you realize that you don't call the shots.
You don't.
They have their personality. They are a person already. They are who they are going to be. And you just have to help guide them through the world. You don't have a say in what they're going to do or who they're going to be. And I think that's one of the hardest things I've had to realize, kind of letting go of that, those expectations of what I thought motherhood was going to be like.
Yeah. Focusing on the theme of setting boundaries, a huge boundary that I've been setting recently is when people ask me when I'm having another child.
Oh, yeah, that's a hard
I
one.
despise that question. First of all, why do you care? And second of all, why does it bother you that I only have one child? And I've told my husband this, and we got into a bit of an argument about it because he made a joke about it at a family party about when are we going to have another kid. And when we went home, I told him, I don't ever want you to make another joke like that because if I decide to have another child, then I'll have another child. But if I don't want to, it's not happening. And I am perfectly fine only having one child. And if you want another child, you can go have another child with someone else.
Go find someone else.
I will I will open my arms to that child you have with another woman because if I don't want one, it's not happening. And I told him that. And now, yesterday at the party, so many people were asking me about it. And I would respond with one of three things. One, if the man has it, I will happily have another child. Two, I'll have another child if I want to or if I'm ready. And three, why does it bother you?
That's a
Asking
good
them a
one.
question.
That is a good one. I like that one.
And that one was my last resort after 500 people had already asked me. But I asked that person, why does it bother you that I don't have another child? And the typical answer, well, they're going to grow up alone. They're going to be weird because they're only children. And I said, she has two cousins.
Yeah.
She has 500 kids that come and see her all the time. And at the end of the day, a child is who they are, not because if they have a sibling or
Yeah.
not, but because it's just who they are. And I know people that are really socially awkward and they have siblings, so it doesn't matter. So I've gotten to a point where I no longer feel guilty
Well, it's
to
rude to ask. I mean, how do they know if you like you don't want more kids? What if you have infertility issues? That is such a rude question to ask. And I always tell people, because I get into this argument. I have two kids, but I get into this argument for other people all the time because you know what? It bothers me too. Because I have a really strong belief that people should have the amount of kids they want to have, not for any other reason.
that they can support.
Not because I want someone to take care of me when I'm older. Not because I want my child to have a sibling. Those are not good enough reasons to have another
Yeah.
child. You have children because you want them. And I think that that's something that's really helped me through my dark times because when I decided to have kids, I made the decision to have kids. I decided that I was going to go off birth control and that I was going to be ready for me because I was married for 7 years before I had kids. So we got those comments all the time.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
when are you going to have kids? And all of that. You guys have been married for so long. And I would get pressured from everybody. I would say everyone except for my mother-in-law is the only person in this world who didn't ask me ever, when are you going to have kids? And so the day that I decided to have kids, I had them for me because I wanted to. And so when things get hard, I look at those kids and I say, I made the decision to have them. Nobody pressured me into it.
Yeah.
I made that decision. So buck up and deal with it because you made this decision. You had a
Yeah.
choice. And so when people, bring those things up, it really makes me angry because I think that those aren't valid reasons to have kids. I
Yeah.
think you need to think really deeply about the reasons that you want to have kids, because the truth is that you could have 5 kids and they could all not talk to each other.
Yeah,
And that's the
exactly.
reality of it. Or because people come at me all the time. I have 2 boys and they're like, "Oh, aren't you going to try for the girl? And don't you want?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want a daughter." And I am really lucky because I wanted to have 2 boys and that's what I got. And I think that's a really good answer. Why does it bother you that I don't have a girl? Why does it bother you that I don't want to have a daughter? I have a niece, and that for me is like everything in the world. My life is complete and I don't need anything else. And I'm sorry that it bothers you, but I don't need that. And even now when I tell people, then I don't want to have any more kids, and they're like, "Oh, but you're young. You'll change your mind."
Oh,
I feel like it's something that people say out of habit.
yeah.
And even though I think it goes back to a lot of our feelings of, although people don't do it maliciously, it's inappropriate.
Yeah, and sometimes it's malicious.
Yeah, sometimes it is.
Sometimes it does feel malicious, and that's when I slap back with a rude comment. But, yeah, I feel like all of that just goes towards our theme of this podcast of setting boundaries and doing what's best for yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to look at yourself in the mirror. You're the one that has to wake up and every single day be who you are. Something that we talked about in our other episode was we have to wake up and every single day be intentional on what we do. And at the end of the day, you're the one that has to face your decisions and you're the one that has to face the negative consequences if things don't go your way. And no one else is going to be there to take those consequences off of you. Because the same way people go and ask you, when are you having another kid? They're not the ones waking up in the middle of the night. They're not the ones having to support them financially. And they're not the ones that have to deal with their bad days or their good days. And that's the huge thing that people don't think about, is that we have to live with our own decisions.
And I think that it's the hardest thing for me as being a parent is watching other people enjoy my kids and me not being able to do that. Because I'm the one who has to set the rules. I'm the one who has to educate them. I'm the one who always constantly has to say no while everyone else gets to say yes. And that is so hard for me because everyone else is the ones who are enjoying the joys of
Yeah.
having kids. And I'm the one who has to set my foot down and be like, "Oh, actually, no, you can't watch TV," or "No, you can't eat candy for breakfast," or "No, you can't do these things." And I'm the one who's constantly having to say no. And it's exhausting. It's funny, my husband, he wanted to have 5 kids. And then
Oh, Lordy.
we had the one, and the one wasn't that bad. And then we had another one and we had them so close together. And I think one of the hardest parts for me to kind of come to terms with myself was that I feel like I really rushed into having my second child because I really wanted that part of my life to be over.
Yeah.
I really wanted to just have pregnancy in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to ever be waiting for that, Like I had this whole plan, I was gonna get married, I was gonna have my kids, my 2 kids, and then I was gonna have surgery. I always have this really bad habit of deferring happiness. Be like, "Okay, well, like, I'm not happy now, but I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I have kids. I'll be happy when I have surgery." And so for me, it was like really hard because I always wanted them to be like close in age, even though I didn't really think about the difficulties of what it is to have 2 little babies who need constant attention, who drink milk and need their diaper changed and have car seats. And I didn't think of the logistics. I just thought, okay, like I'll have my 2 kids and then I can move on with my life. I can settle into my life, like knowing that these are the kids that I'm gonna have. And so I can live my life around that. So I feel like one of my biggest flaws is deferring happiness. And so I felt like, okay, I'll have my second child and then I can just shape my life around that. I will have our kids, we can settle into our life. And then I'll have surgery and then I'll finally feel good about myself. And that'll be the beginning of something beautiful. And I feel like when I really hit rock bottom was after I had my surgery. And that was like, I would say, the worst of times because coming out from that surgery and realizing that the surgery didn't bring me happiness was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to live through. And I, at that moment, had been saving money for a really long time for the surgery, and I had been waiting for it ever since I decided to get pregnant. And I was like, okay, in the future, I'll have my kids and I'll have a surgery and I'll finally feel good about myself. And then, life will be great. And so coming out of that surgery and not liking how the surgery turned out was a really pivotal moment in my life because, I came home after being in Mexico for a month and I was in so much pain. And my son was so little. I think my son at the time was
Wow.
about to turn 1. And so I couldn't move. I was in so much pain. My little baby is still not walking, so he still needs me to do all this stuff for him. My oldest son was 3, my youngest was 1, and just coming home and, I couldn't walk past the mirror without crying because I hated how I looked. And I just thought I spent all this time and money and effort and, family made so many sacrifices to go to Mexico and help me. And then realizing that this didn't give me the happiness that I thought it was going to. And it was really, really hard to accept that. And I was so depressed at that in those moments because I didn't know what else to do. And I think that it really took me to a point in my life where I had to make a decision. Either I'm just going to live miserable for the rest of my life or I'm going to have to do something drastic. And I just remember before I had my surgery having to negotiate with myself and just be like, okay, like you're going to wake up and you're going to take a shower and then you're going to go to work. And then you'll come home and you'll take care of the kids for a little bit and then you can go back to sleep. And it was like, you just have to get through these things and then you can go back to bed because all I wanted to do was just get in bed. And I just wanted to stay in bed as long as I could so that I didn't have to face my life. And my kids being so little, it was hard because they needed me all the time. And so when I got back from Mexico and I just really had to look inwards and just be like, what do I need to do? Because at this point, I had been going to therapy, but like I said in my episode, I wasn't doing the work. I was just going, talking until I'm blue in the face. But I kind of started to realize that venting to anyone isn't doing anything for me. Like it's temporary relief, but as soon as I leave, I feel bad again. That moment, I just had to take control. I had to take control back of my life. I had to realize I'm an adult and I'm responsible for this. Earlier that year, I had read a really good book on addiction. In the book, it was an autobiography about this girl who was struggling with alcoholism. And she talked about how, in her life, she had to come to the realization that even though the addiction wasn't her fault, it was her responsibility to heal from it. And that's kind of what I felt in that moment. Maybe all of these mental health issues that I have, they may not necessarily be my fault, but that doesn't mean that I don't have to do anything about them. I
Mhm.
have to. I have to do it for myself. I have to do it for myself and for my kids, but more for myself because my mind is a very scary place. It's a rat's nest in there. So being able to just be like, I don't like what's going on in my brain. And even though it's not my fault, it is my responsibility to do the things that I need to do to heal. And so I just made that decision. I don't want to be sad anymore. And so I reached out to my doctor and I was like, hey, do you know of any nutritionists who could help me with my diet? Because at that moment, I hadn't done anything. I hadn't changed my life at all. Like I knew that I had to in the near future, but I still hadn't started changing my diet or my relationship with exercise. And so I got in contact with the nutritionist, and even though she's not the nutritionist I have now, she's the one who taught me how to eat and who taught me like you can still eat the things that you like, but you just have to make sure that you measure the things so that you're eating a whole diet. And so there would be times where I would eat what everyone else is eating, but I'm measuring everything that I'm eating, there's a purpose for it. And so she really helped me realize that I don't really have to change my life drastically in order to begin to see changes. And so I started working with her and I was with her for a really long time. And then I got a trainer and I started going to the gym after I was told by my doctor that I could start working out, and I just started building these habits, and it was really hard because our life, it was never around healthy eating habits or exercise, and so when I would take time out of my busy day to go to the gym or to meal prep or when I would have to say, "No, I'm not gonna eat that because it's not part of my diet," and people would look at me, "Oh, yeah, but we'll see how long this lasts."
Yeah,
That's kind of the feeling that I got from people, and it would make me feel bad because it would make me feel like, well, if I do slip up, I'm proving them right,
yeah,
and then I would feel bad about myself, and so there were things that I just had to kinda go back into my brain and say, "You know what? You're not doing this for them. You're doing this for you because you wanna feel good about yourself," and I needed to stop comparing my journey to other people's journeys, and up until that point, the only thing I had ever tried before to kind of make myself feel better was alcohol. And I had a really bad relationship with alcohol for most of my life. And we come from family with alcoholism. And so kind of realizing that I had spent most of my life abusing alcohol and not really understanding it as abuse because it's something that's so common in our life. And it's something that is at every party we go to, no matter if it's a baptism, a first year birthday party, there's always alcohol present. And so remembering a time where I would go out drinking Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like Sunday mimosas for breakfast, and Friday after work, I would de-stress with champagne or tequila or drinking, but then it got bad. I started to black out. It started to go to a bad place because I wasn't doing it for fun. I was doing it to self-medicate. I was doing
mhm,
it to forget. And it started to go to a really bad place, and it was really hard to stop that self-abuse because you will encounter alcohol everywhere you go, and I think like you said in your last episode, food and
yeah,
alcohol are addictions that are so hard to recover from because no matter I mean, you're going to a birthday party, you're not necessarily being offered cocaine or crystal
yeah,
meth, but probably for us, 100% of the time, we're gonna be offered alcohol or food. And so it's something that's my relationship now with alcohol is so triggering because after I had my second son, I couldn't even drink because it made me sick. And so having to just come to that realization that I probably am never gonna be able to drink like I used to, which is probably a good thing, but it's lonely. It's very lonely because my body rejects alcohol now. Like, if I drink, I know that I'm gonna be so sick. But then I go to a party and people are like, "Come on, have one, have one, have one." And then I feel uncomfortable by not drinking. But then if I drink, I'm gonna be the one paying the price for it later because my body just can't handle it. And so it's something that's very lonely. It's changed my relationship with a lot of people too. It's not hard because I don't miss it because I remember it just being something I needed to just get through the day. But it is hard to live in a world where most of our relationships revolve around alcohol, and me not engaging in those activities sometimes drives a little bit of a wedge with people, and it's
yeah,
hard. But, I just had to kind of wake up one day and realize that if I want a different life, I have to do something about it because this cycle that I'm on where I just go to therapy and I don't do the work and I don't do the things that I'm supposed to do to set boundaries and do all these things, if I don't do them, my life is never going to be different. No one's going to do it for me. There's no one in this world. It doesn't matter if I go with the best, most expensive therapist in the world. There's only so much they can do. If I don't go home and make actual changes in my life is never going to be different. And setting those boundaries is really hard because I think that we have this, or at least I have this idea of healing as it's something being so beautiful and
mhm,
being so like giving you so much light when in reality, it's not like that at all. Healing is so violent and it's so difficult to do. And it's so difficult to implement the changes because at the beginning, your body is like, "What's going on?" And it makes it for me at least, like, it drives my anxiety off the charts, and I feel like I'm disappointing people and my people pleasing, and my instinct is just to go back to what's familiar. But then if I go back to what's familiar, I'm going back to my miserable life, and I don't want that.
we both were in this stage at the exact same time because when you were going through your depression after your surgery, I was in the pits of motherhood. I had a newborn baby when you were recovering from your surgery. And for me, that was really difficult. It was so difficult to navigate being a new mom, and as I talked about in my episode, I got pregnant on accident, so I didn't plan to be a mom so soon, but I made the decision to have her, so it was really, really hard at the beginning, thinking, "Is this gonna be my life now? I'm 22 years old and am not sleeping because this baby won't let me sleep," and I lost myself completely in being a mom, and at the time, you had just gotten your surgery, and I remember you telling me how bad you felt and how you didn't like the results and how you didn't like the way you looked, and in my mind, I was like, "What is this girl talking about? She looks amazing." And it goes to your point of, you're the only one that really feels it, and everyone can see from the outside, but you're the only one that really knows what it feels like. And I felt the same way because my experience of being a mom was so different than yours because you decided that you were ready to have kids. I didn't have the choice. I was kind of pushed into it and made the best out of a bad situation. And obviously now I feel so much more confident in motherhood. But at the time, I remember it was really hard. And it kind of brought me back to the exact same place of what is my next step? Am I gonna continue these bad habits of using food to make myself feel better, or am I gonna really push myself out of this? And at that point, I was like, I wish I could turn to alcohol because I'm not a big drinker
Yeah.
and I have never been a big drinker. I really have always steered away from alcohol because I see the impact of our alcohol in our family, and it makes me uncomfortable. So I kind of went the extreme route of just 100% not being a drinker. And yeah, I'll get drunk, twice a year, but I one margarita, but that was just never a part of my life. Like, now I have a zero alcohol house because my husband struggles with alcoholism, and I just completely steer away from alcohol, so now we don't have any alcohol in our house, but we have food. So, it was really hard for me to get to a place where I can have food in the house, but I'm not gonna binge on it, and at the beginning of this journey, I just completely steered away from it. I only had food in the house that was part of my
Mhm.
meal plan. I didn't have any snacks in the house. The only snack I had was fruit or, vegetables, but I really just 100% steered away from having those kinds of things in my house because they were really triggering.
Mhm.
The same way someone can open a door and see a bottle of alcohol and feel triggered, that's how I felt opening my pantry and seeing food. So I just 100% just cut it out of my life, and for my husband, it was really hard because he had to hide his snacks in the
Yeah.
garage or something because I really just didn't even wanna see them, and at the beginning, being a new mom, I really just wanted to just throw myself in food and just completely forget about it, but being recently postpartum and weighing myself and seeing a weight that I was not comfortable with, it was really disheartening. If I continue the way I'm going, it's just gonna get worse. And it's gonna be even worse because then I'm gonna feel really bad about myself and I'm gonna have a baby, and I'm gonna have a husband because at that point, we got married a month after having a baby, so it was our first year of marriage, our first year of being
Mhm.
parents, my first year of a master's program, and our first year of really working on our business. So everything kind of piled on, and in the moment, all I wanted to do was go to McDonald's and get a
Yeah,
nice meal and
forget.
watch TV, and that's all I wanted to do, but I had to make the choice of I need to choose myself and I need to choose to be happy, but real happiness, not fake happiness that then just makes me sad.
Yeah.
So I started working with your same nutritionist who I have so much love
Yeah.
for because she really showed me that I can live a happy life eating what I like and not feeling guilty about it. So I started working with her and I lost a lot of weight working with her. I got a lot of people telling me, "Well, let's see how long this lasts," or, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. You have your whole life to lose weight. And sometimes I did just want to give in and think, maybe they're right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not something that I have to work on right now. I can just work on it later when my daughter's older. And then I stopped and I really thought, what do I want her to grow up seeing? I don't want her to grow up seeing a mom that's sad because I hate the way I look.
Yeah.
And I don't wanna go through the same experience of having plastic surgery and then messing it all up because I had a bad relationship with food, because I did have plastic surgery twice, and both times I ended up ruining the results because of my relationship with food. And that was really hard for me to come to terms with, and I was very in denial about that. But now, as an adult, seeing how my relationship with food has impacted my life so much, I accept those mistakes, and it's time to not look in the past and just keep moving forward. And right now, it's really hard to not give in to what people say or think about my diet. And the same day I dropped my episode, I got comments about my diet, and it was really disheartening because the person didn't listen to the episode, but just knowing that there's these opinions out there that what I'm doing is not healthy because we grew up in an environment where dieting wasn't healthy and working out wasn't healthy, that now it really made me think, am I doing the right thing? Comfortable getting to a place in my journey now where I don't care if someone feels uncomfortable with my decision. At the end of the day, it's my decision. And that has been really hard. Very, very, very hard because we live in a culture where we're constantly taught to believe what other people think of us is the truth,
Yeah.
and that is very hard to overcome.
Well, I think that another hard thing is probably like the miscommunication. Like, well, this isn't a diet, it's a lifestyle choice. Like, we are choosing to live our life. It's not a diet that's going to end in 1 year or 2 years or 2 months. It's the way that we're choosing to live our lives from now on. And one thing that I've talked to my nutritionist about that she's really had to repeat to me 50 million times because I recently went on vacation and I met with her right before I left because I finally hit my goal weight. And so I was talking to her like, oh, hey, well, like, by the way, I'm going on vacation for a week. Like, how should I deal with that? Like, how should I deal with like my diet while I'm on vacation? And she's like, Evelyn, you're going on vacation. You don't have to be worried about going on vacation and then ruining your results. And that's when she kind of really has to get firm with me. And she has to tell me, Evelyn, how long did it take you to gain this weight? Well, 1, 2, 3 years. And she's like, exactly. Going on vacation for a week isn't going to undo everything you've been working towards. But the point of that is that it didn't take me a month to lose weight. It didn't take me 2 months to lose weight. I've been on this journey for over a year. And that was one of the hardest things starting this because going to the gym 5 days a week, dieting 5, 6 days a week, and for months and not seeing any results is disheartening. And you just feel like giving up because you're like, what's the point? I don't see any changes. I was working with our first nutritionist for, I want to say about like 8 months or so. And she was great. But then I was I had kind of nailed down my relationship with food and my understanding of the things that I could eat and the way that my body should feel when eating food and when to stop eating, which was one of my hardest
Yeah.
things to deal with because I'm still very much, even now, like if I have like a cheat meal, like I have to finish everything on the plate because it's like, I feel like it's going to be my last meal. Like
Yeah.
I have a really hard time understanding when to stop eating. And so once I had kind of had a little bit more control over those things, I started going with a new nutritionist who was helping me now more like with my fitness goals, which was to tone my body. And then once I started working with her, every single time I met with her, I was hitting my goals. I was hitting the goals that she had for me. And it felt so great to be like, I can do this. Like, this is a choice that I'm making. And if I make a choice to live this way, I can have anything that I want. If I make the choice to put myself first, I can be happy. I can reach my goals. I can do anything that I want to do, but I have to put myself first. And it's still really hard up until this day. And it's also hard because I feel like I have this imposter syndrome when
Mm.
it comes to my fitness because I feel like a lot of people think that, oh, well, you had surgery, so are they really impressive goals? To that, I say the surgeon started me on this journey, but I took it to the finish line
Yeah.
because if I look at pictures of myself after surgery and I look at pictures of myself now, those are two different people. And I had a choice. I could either choose to take what the doctor did for me and live with that, or I could choose to improve my life and really set myself on this journey. And he told me when I had surgery and when I met with him, he's like, you need to change your life. You need to change the way that you eat. This is not a lifetime fix. This is just a temporary solution to get you started on your journey. But if you don't do exercise and if you don't take your diet seriously, you're going to be right back here in a year and I'm not going to do surgery on you anymore because you need to change your mindset. Like, this is a lifetime commitment that you're making. It's not just come get surgery and you're going to be good.
Yeah. Right now, when you said that your doctor said that it was a lifelong commitment, it reminds me of, like, we make lifelong commitments all the time. Like, for example, we both made the lifelong commitment to get married and have children, and you've made a lot of commitments of buying houses and doing all these things. But it makes me think, then why is it so hard to make a lifelong commitment to ourselves if we make all of these commitments to other people? And it reminds me of feeling guilty anytime I do anything for myself, and it's something that I told you when I started school that I felt really bad mom guilt. I felt such bad mom guilt. It was really hard for me to work through that and to get through that, and it just makes me think, why is it so hard for us to show up for ourselves when we can show up for so many other people?
Well, probably because our mom was a people pleaser. And that's kind of what I look at when I think about doing things for myself because I don't want, and people take a lot of offense when I say these things. And when I tell them, I want to have my own life. I don't want my kids to grow up and my life to only be my kids. And then I don't want to let them live their life because I don't know who I am outside of my kids. Everyone get their own life, okay? And people take a lot of offense when I say that. And I'm like, really? Because I'm looking forward to the day when my kids go off to college and they go and live their life, struggle. And I would really love the audience's opinions on like what their reasons are to have kids. If you don't have kids, what is your reason that you want to have kids? And if you do have kids, what is your reason to have kids? Because I struggle a lot with that because one of my core values for my kids is that I don't want them to grow up feeling like they owe me anything. Like, I don't want them to feel like they owe me to be lawyers or doctors, or I don't want them to feel like they owe me, like, to take care of me when I'm old. Like, I didn't have kids for the purpose of seeing what I get out of them. Like, I had kids because I want them to live the most authentic, beautiful, happy life, whatever that means to them. And I think that one of the things that's been really hard for me to kind of navigate with my parents is like maybe what they thought happiness isn't what I think happiness
Yeah.
is. And for me growing up and watching them hustle and bust their butts in their business, I never wanted that. I never wanted my life to revolve around my job or my
Yeah.
business. And it's hard because although like based on the fact that they've been so successful, they've been able to help us a lot. And I'm eternally grateful for that. Like their life revolves around their business. That is their life. And I never wanted that. And so when my husband started his business, I didn't want anything to do with it. I was like, I'm not helping you.
Yeah.
I'm not getting involved. Like that is your job and I have my job and that's it. And it's been really hard for me to integrate myself into his business because I never wanted my kids feeling like our life revolved around work.
Yeah. I definitely 100% agree with that of not wanting my kids to see how work affects our relationship because we grew up with that so much. And my husband and I run a business together, and that's really hard. And
Mhm.
I have had to set boundaries with him of, 9 to 5, tell me whatever you want. After
Yeah.
5, don't talk to me about it.
Yeah. I'm off the
And yeah,
clock.
I'm off the clock. And I do tell him because he's the kind of person that will be in bed at 10 and wants to talk to me about the business. And I just tell him, absolutely not. I am not on the clock. I'm
Yeah.
not working. I don't want to hear anything about the business. You can tell me tomorrow. And really being firm in that, it's really hard, but we have to do it for the sanity of our relationship and so our daughter doesn't see us always bickering about the business. And something that I told you when I first started my master's program, I did get a comment on, "Why don't you study accounting so you can help your
Yeah.
husband with the business?" And I did ask, "What do you think about this, of me leaving
And I
my"
told you absolutely not. Do not do that.
because I'm studying to be a therapist, a marriage and family therapist. and it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I really wanted to be a lawyer, but unfortunately, because of the circumstances, I couldn't pursue that right now. But my second option was to be a therapist, and I consider my therapist to have changed my life. So I really want to be that person for someone else. And when I first started the program, I remember being in my first couple classes and just thinking, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then I got that comment on, "Why don't you study accounting so you can take your husband's business to the next level?" And I told you about it, and you said, "Absolutely not." And I told my husband about it, and he said, "Are you crazy? Like, you're not doing that." And I found a lot of value in what he responded in saying that he made the decision to build a business, so it's his problem. And I'm gonna help him right now that I'm in school, but after that, I have to focus on myself. So, setting those boundaries everywhere, and people say that all the time, and we're gonna talk about this so much on this podcast, but setting boundaries is everything, and setting boundaries and feeling comfortable in your boundaries and feeling comfortable in your life is always the number 1, because and we'll talk about it all the time, you're the one that has to live with yourself, and if I would have left my career for my husband, I would have been miserable, and
Yeah.
I would have resented him so much, and at the end of the day, that's something that I would have had to live with, but I know that I would not have been able to do that.
Yeah, and something that I told you because that was obviously, like, something that I was really because I am an accountant, and so I
Mhm.
think the natural path for me would have been to, go into business with my husband and help him take his business to the next level, but I never wanted that because I'm like, I wanna have my own career, not dependent on his career, like, and so recently, basically, I changed my entire life. Thought that would do it. I started going to therapy, doing the actual work, meditating. I started going to the gym, dieting. I reduced my caffeine intake. I cut out alcohol. I was reading books, reading inspirational quotes, journaling, doing it all, doing it all. And I found myself recently not being able to sleep, like really bad. And I need a lot of sleep to function. So not being able to fall asleep or stay asleep. And it's something that was like really hard for me. And so after many, many, many years, I went to the doctor finally to get a physical. And, I went to him and I was like, hey, doctor, like I don't know what's wrong with me. Like I live a really healthy life, but I can't sleep and I don't know why. And they make you fill out this questionnaire about depression and anxiety. And he's like, okay, well, I see like in your chart that you've struggled with depression for a long time. And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you see a therapist? And I was like, well, yeah, but I've been kind of taking a break because I kind of felt like I was kind of ready to live my life, not super committed to therapy, like not going consistently, but just going it just when I needed it. And so I had been taking a break from it. And my doctor, like, he was like, "Okay, well, like, do you exercise?" And I'm like, "Yes, I exercise a lot." And he's like, "Okay, well, do you eat out?" I'm like, "No, not really. I'm with a nutritionist, so I eat pretty healthy." He's like, "Okay, okay. Do you drink?" I'm like, "No, I don't drink." And I kind of stumped him. And he's like, "Okay, well, let's look at your questionnaire." And he's like, it's your anxiety. He's like, yeah, it's your anxiety. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, your anxiety is off the charts. And I was like, oh my gosh. And anxiety is something that's actually really new to me. I only started to feel anxiety after I had my kids. So like, I feel like I've been dealing with depression most of my life, but anxiety is something that's super new. And so he told me like, okay, well, we're going to run some tests, like blood work. But honestly, I think that first of all, you need to go back to therapy. And second of all, you're probably going to have to go on anti-anxiety medication. If I tell you I lost it, that's an understatement because really scared of medication. I think all the time I've had depression, I've never wanted to go on medication because I'm really afraid of being altered in
Yeah.
any way that could worsen me. And so for me, going on anti-anxiety medication is kind of like an absolute no. And you're in school to be a therapist. And so I told you, like, these are all the fears that I have about going on anti-anxiety medication. And you were like, actually, those are real things that could
Yeah.
happen to you. These are all real things. And honestly, I feel like no one's listening to me. Like, I'm afraid of these things. And then I think the response that I get back is like, yeah, but it's gonna make you feel better. And I'm like, but what if
They
it
don't know that.
doesn't? But what if it doesn't? And that is a problem. What if I start taking this thing that's supposed to make me feel better that doesn't make me feel better, and then I'm gonna feel worse? And I'm like, I'm terrified of that. And so there I go. back to therapy. And honestly, going back to therapy was so defeating to me because I just felt like I'm never going to be better. Like, I'm never going to be over this. Like, it's just a lifelong struggle. And it might be, I don't know, but it just really brings me back to the core of this episode. I need to set my boundaries. I need to not veer off of my boundaries. I need to not veer off of the things that make me feel good, because when I stop those things is when I start to feel bad again. And I think that I have to just realize with myself, like, this is a lifelong commitment to my mental health. And if I, stop doing the things that are necessary to me, I'm going to be right back into that dark
Yeah.
place. And I never want to go back there again. And so reluctantly again, I went back to therapy, and it's hard for me because when I'm secluded and away from all these
Mhm.
triggers, I'm fine. But then when I'm going out into the real world and I'm having to face my fears and having to actually set my boundaries in motion and having to say no and saying no without explaining myself, and it's really scary, and I sometimes really don't know how to deal with it because a part of me wants to just be better already, and another part of me is like, you have to be committed to yourself and you can't, you know and kind of going back to like the dieting, like, this is a lifelong commitment. We're changing the way that we live our life. And so if we go back to doing the things that made us unwell in the first place, then we're going to be unwell.
Yeah. I really feel you on that therapy one. I also stopped going for, I would say a couple months, but as part of my program, we have to go to therapy. We have to complete 20 hours of therapy, and I had to go back to school, and I noticed myself at the beginning going back to therapy and kind of just showing up and just talking about very basic things because I didn't wanna go deep,
Yeah.
and I just thought, I'm just gonna show up because I have to, because she has to sign my slip that I
Yeah.
went, but I'm not really gonna entertain anything, and that's how I was for a couple of sessions, and then I kind of got to a point where I realized that therapy wasn't working for me because I wasn't doing it at its full potential.
Mhm.
And being in school, talking about therapy every day, learning how to interact with people in therapy is very different than how you interact with people in the real world,
Yeah.
because you have to show up every single session with this person, give them 100% your attention, be there for them, but not give them advice for their life. Just
Mhm.
listen to them and reflect back to them what they think and what they feel, and having to sit there with them in their feelings and all of their thoughts. And viewing it from that point of view, I went into therapy with so much more intention. And now I go to therapy and I really do work on things and I really do think about things and think, how is therapy gonna get me to the next level in my life? The same way, how is my diet gonna get me to the next level? How is exercise? How is my marriage, motherhood, school? How are these things going to get me to the next level instead of just staying stagnant, which I've stayed for such a long time. So it is uncomfortable going to therapy
It's
and
very.
doing the work and setting boundaries and thinking that we have permission to get better. And for a long time, I thought, I don't have permission or I don't have the authority to get better because I've just been like this for so long. And, why get better if people around us aren't working on themselves? And that
Yeah.
has been very hard for me. And that's something that I've talked about with my therapist, that why should I do this work? Why should I wake up every day and choose to be better if people around us are not choosing to be better and people around us are not choosing to go into the next stage of their life? Because something that I wrote down that has been very difficult for me is feeling uncomfortable in spaces where people just talk about other people
Mhm.
or talk or judge other people's lives or judge other people's experiences, because I have this fear of being judged. So I don't like being in an environment where we just constantly think about other people's lives in a negative way. So being the person that I am, I at first would just leave and completely remove myself from the situation and just think, let them talk about other people, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't add to my life. So I'm just gonna leave, just do
Mhm.
my own thing. And now I get to a place of asking, why does it bother you?
Yeah.
And that has been very, very interesting of getting to a place where I can actually say, "Why does it bother you that that person does that?" And it's because of school, because in school,
Yeah.
we have to think, "Why does this bother me?" And seeing people's reactions is very funny. Hearing their responses is
Yeah.
very funny, but getting to a place where I realize that I have to work on my stability in my relationships. I have to read the books and listen to the podcasts that are adding to my life so that I can every day decide to be happy and every day decide to give my all. Anyone that's out there that's listening to this and doesn't know how to start or doesn't know how to get to the next stage in their life, my advice would just be to every single day choose yourself. Every single day, wake up with intention. Like you said about building habits, it starts so small, and that would be my advice, just waking up every single day and choosing yourself.
I feel like so seen in what you said about it's hard because when you're doing all this work to change yourself and the people around you in your life aren't, and you feel like, where do you fit in there? Because, like, for me, one of the hardest things was, well, I'm doing all these things to feel better, but then I'll go around people and they'll trigger me and they'll make me feel back to the place again. So it's basically undoing everything that I'm doing, but kind of changing my thoughts and understanding that, number one, people don't change. People can improve, people can do the work to be better, but at the core, they are who they are. And so I think that for me, one of the things that's really helped me when I get really frustrated is to just accept that, especially like with our parents, like if I want them to accept me for who I am, I need to accept them for who they are. And I need to if I want them to release their expectations of me, I need to release my expectations of them. And I need to let them be who they are. And if I need something that they can't give me, I have to go somewhere else
Yeah.
to get it. Or I have to look at it within myself, because I think one of the really hard things is kind of is letting go of like, well, I thought that a parent was this way. I thought that a parent was that way. And it's like the reality is that we're all doing the best that we can. And if they can't give me something, it's probably because they weren't given that as a child. And one of the hard things that I've had to come to realization to is that it's really hard to realize it and really hard to accept that, they're not doing it maliciously, but they are doing it. So one of the things that I've tried to do is to just be honest. And that may seem like something easy, but it is so hard because you're ruffling feathers. You're doing things that are so out of the norm that you don't know what the reaction is going to be. And for me, it's just being honest with whoever, if someone did something to me that made me feel bad, and I never look at it like, oh, they were intentionally trying to hurt me. It's more of like, well, they did hurt me, and regardless of the reason why it did hurt me. So I go to that person and I say, hey, that thing that you said or that thing that you did, it made me feel this way. And then whatever their reaction may be, at least I got it off my chest. Because I think that even though people don't change, we, I do believe that it's our responsibility to voice how things make us feel, because we assume that the other person knows that they're hurting us, and maybe they do, but there's a really big difference between being like, hey, what you did hurt me, and that person being like, oh, I didn't mean to. Or maybe they did mean to, but at least you confronted it. And giving myself that opportunity to put it behind me and just say, okay, and then guess what? If they do it again, that's when boundaries start being set. I start setting those boundaries. And if they do it again, more boundaries go up. And eventually, if that person is unwilling to meet me where I need them to meet me, then maybe we just don't have a relationship. And that's just the reality. And it's hard when it's someone really close to you. But at the end of the day, like we keep saying, we're the ones who have to live with ourselves. And if I'm going to live my life making myself feel bad to not make someone like to let someone else keep treating me badly, I'm going to choose myself,
Yeah.
even though it's hard. And I guess what I really want people to understand is that it's not easy. It is not easy to set those boundaries. It's not easy to say no or or being a people pleaser. It's not easy to say, oh no, I can't go to that party for whatever reason. It's like, oh no, because I can't, or because I don't want to, or whatever the reason may be. My answer is just no. choosing that for ourselves and realizing that we're not kids anymore. We have the power to make decisions for ourselves, for our life, the way we want our life to look like. And if we want our life to be different, we need to do different things. And that is just the reality of it. And if you don't know where to start, it's really scary. And you have every single right in the world to be scared, but no one's going to do it for you. And shifting the blame is never gonna, it's just never gonna take you anywhere because, I think that when I'm negotiating with myself, I can think of a zillion excuses why I can't do my therapist will tell me to do something. I'm like, I can come up with 100 excuses on like right there, then and there of why that won't work for me. And I think she has asked me to do a lot of things that initially I automatically veto and say, I'm not doing that. And a couple of weeks ago when I saw her and she told me to do something and I told her no. And she said, why? And I was like, because I'm scared. She's like, well, what is going to happen? And I just think like, well, nothing.
You're gonna die.
I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that I'm scared. And kind of she suggested to me to, let that fear fuel me because she's like, if you feel scared and if you feel anxious, it means you're doing something different. And it's going to take you somewhere. It's going to take you somewhere. It may take you somewhere you never thought of. It may take you somewhere that you didn't want to be, but it'll take you somewhere different. And then you can decide if it works for you or not. But if you don't ever try anything, then you're not ever going to know what works for you. So I would love to leave you guys with this. I read this really good book on angels. So I struggle a lot with what I believe in, right? I'm not really sure. We grew up Catholic because we had to be Catholic, but not necessarily because I believed in it. And I read this really great book on angels. And it just talks about the angel numbers and about how when we see these numbers in our life that it might associate with a message from your angels. And it's something that that it really resonated with me because it was something like, your angels are always taking care of you. Like between the angels and the divine, they're always with you. And so now every time that I am going through something hard, I just pray to my angels and I tell them like, I trust you and I trust the path that you're taking me on. And I give you my anxiety and I let go of it because I know that you're out there working on my path. So I just have to trust. And so I sent you this quote that I love. We could post it on Instagram later, but it goes, your angels know the when, the why, and the how. They know the right time, the right door, and the right opportunity. So just show up, do your part, then let them handle the rest.
Oh, that's really pretty.
Well, do you have anything else to add?
I would just say that healing is so hard and it's very ugly. It's not a pretty thing. And
we had a great analogy. What I thought of healing was a woman in like a flower headband in a field, like illuminated by the sun. That's what I thought healing was going to be like, but
it's not.
But the
it's
reality,
like a train running you over and over again.
Yeah, it's like walking in a snowstorm barefoot with a blindfold on and a grizzly bear following you.
And you're just running into the unknown. It's literally what it is. You're
running into the unknown. You don't know where you're running to
or if there will be something there that will protect you. Like you just don't know.
You don't know if when you get there it's going to be safe or if you're going to, be in more danger. You don't know. But you just keep going.
And that's what I would leave everyone with, is that healing is not pretty. It's choosing yourself even when you're scared, even when it's unknown, even when you think it's not going to work out. That's what healing is.
Well, thanks for listening. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll know when new episodes drop. Also, check us out on Instagram. We share behind-the-scenes photos and updates after every episode. And if you're interested in being a guest, the link is in our caption and Instagram bio. We'll be having Patreon episodes soon. Tune in next week for our very first guest. As a little sneak peek, he's a young bodybuilder who will be sharing his journey with fitness, diet, and an injury that changed his path. See you next week on Choices Were Made. Bye.